Okay, in this example we're going to use the technique of completing the square to solve a quadratic equation. So we begin with x squared minus 14x plus 20 equals 0. And when you're asked to go further than completing the square, when you're asked, even if it is simply to complete the square, in fact this will work, it's best to start off with a and b on the left, and that's all. So we have x squared minus 14x, and then move the 20 across. Okay. And so it seems a little bit unusual maybe to you, but it's best to start off this way with just the a and the b on the left. So our a would be 1 and our b would be negative 14. Okay, so if we go through the steps that we had before for completing the square, step 1 would be to divide b by 2. So it would be negative 14 divided by 2 is negative 7. In step 2, you should be able to go through this quickly, because if you've been doing them in the order that you're supposed to, we've been doing a lot of these recently. So negative 7 squared, we square the negative 7 and we get plus 49. Okay. Now, this is where it changes a little bit. We're going to go back to this line here. Okay, we're going to go back to that line there where we had the x squared and the x term on the left hand side, and anything else was on the right hand side. And what we're going to do is we're going to add 49 onto both sides of that equation. Now remember, whatever you do to one side of an equation, you have to do to the second side of the equation. So we're going to add 49 onto both sides. So this is now a little bit different than what you've seen in the previous examples. So the original equation was x squared minus 14x, and now we add we add plus 49 onto this side of the equation, and it was negative 20 that we had previously, but we're going to add 49 onto that side as well. Okay, so step 4 is going to see us, we've completed the square, but we're going to write this as a perfect square. We're going to see us write this as a perfect square now. So this is going to be x, and then we're going to have minus 7, whatever we had in step 1, minus 7. That's going to be squared. On the other side, we do 49 minus 20, which is 29. Okay. Now that's kind of as far as we've gone before. It's a little bit further than where we went before, but we basically finished after 4 steps in the past. In this question, though, if you look at the way the question is written, we were asked to solve the trinomial. That means find any possible values of x. Okay, so we have to go further and we have to find the possible values of x. Now, to step to the side for one moment and see if you can remember how we did a question of this type. So this isn't directly part of this question here, but let's say we had the question x squared equals 9. Well, if you remember how we did that, one of the ways we could do it was to cancel the square, you need to take square roots. So if we take square root of x squared, that cancels and we just get x. But when we take the square root of an x, you have to take plus and minus the square root of the other side. Okay? So you have to take plus and minus the square root of the other side. In that case, it would be plus or minus 3. We do something similar here. Okay? We do something similar here. We take the square root of this side, which is going to give you x minus 7. But we have to take plus or minus the square root of the other side. Okay? You have to take plus or minus the square root of the other side. So it's plus or minus the square root of 29. Now we want to get x on its own. Okay, whenever you're solving an equation, you want to get the variable on its own. So move the negative 7 across, and that gives you x is equal to, move negative 7 across becomes positive 7 plus or minus the square root of 29. Okay, so that's your answer. That's your answers. There are 2 of them here. Those are your answers. X equals 7 plus the square root of 29, and x equals 7 minus the square root of 29. You can write it like this, which is the most compact way of writing it, or you can write it as two separate answers. 7 plus the square root of 29, and 7 minus the square root of 29. Now if you want to use your calculator, you can to round that off, but those answers, as we've shown them there, are just perfect. Okay, so this one is a little bit harder. We'll look at another example. You take your time as you study it, and as you practice, follow it line by line. Keep this in front of you as you do your own work.